Hi, my name is Jay, and in this video we are going to talk about the Ajivikas. So the Ajivika religious tradition came into existence around 6th century BC. The 6th century BC as a whole was an important period in Indian history because this period saw the birth of two great religious traditions of Jainism and Buddhism. But apart from these two religious traditions, there was also the third religious tradition of the Ajivikas, which during this time was considered a rival of Jainism and Buddhism. So it is important for us to understand the religious doctrines and the philosophical aspects of the Ajivikas. But before we do so, I would like to talk about the term Ajivika itself and what it meant. So according to one view, the term Ajivikas initially meant professionals. So the followers of Ajivikas were initially mocked by other sects as professional ascetics. So there is a story in the Jatakas which greatly explains this point. So the story goes like this. There was a merchant who was traveling on a ship. Now he suffered a shipwreck and he was cast ashore in a state of nudity. Now when the villagers and the people of the surroundings came and saw him, they thought that he was a monk. So they gave him food and shelter. So the merchant saw that he could get food and shelter without doing anything. So he loudly proclaimed, "I have found a way to make a living." So this is how the other sects used to mock the Ajivikas. So for them, Ajivikas were ascetics not because of any religious compulsion, but because it was their profession. Now these types of remarks are found in the Jain as well as in the Buddhist text, and it shows that these two sects considered the Ajivika sect as an important rival, and that is why we see that such types of remark is present in both of these traditions. Generally, it is believed that Makkhali Goshala was the founder of the Ajivika sect. But it appears that before the birth of Makkhali Goshala, there were various Ajivika community and there were also religious traditions which were similar to the Ajivikas. But what Makkhali Goshala did was, he organized these various communities into a Sangha of the Ajivika sect, and he also formulated the doctrine of the Ajivika. So that is how we can say that he was the founder of the Ajivika sect. Now what is even more interesting is that Makkhali Goshala, Gautam Buddha and Mahavir existed during the same period, and according to the Jain sources, we are told that earlier Makkhali Goshala was a disciple of Mahavir, but later there was an altercation between these two and Makkhali Goshala decided to form a separate sect. According to Anguttara Nikaya, we are told that Gautam Buddha believed that of all the doctrines, it is the doctrine of the Ajivikas which is the worst. And we are also told that Gautam Buddha once upon a time declared that Makkhali Goshala was a stupid man. So you can see that of all the doctrines which were present during this period, Gautam Buddha considered Makkhali Gosala and his doctrine of the Ajivikas the principal doctrine which he wanted to oppose. Now when we read about the Ajivika ascetics in both Buddhist and Jain text, it appears that the Ajivika ascetics practiced severe asceticism, but their asceticism was not as severe as of the Jains. But we are told according to the Buddhist sources that the Ajivika ascetics were hypocrites. Now in one of the Buddhist texts, there is an interesting incident in which Gautam Buddha asks someone that how can a Ajivika ascetics eat such meager meals. So this person replies that these Ajivikas ascetics are hypocrite because they eat enormous meals in secret while practicing austerity in public life. And this type of accusation can also be found in the Jain sources. Jain texts accuse Ajivika ascetics of not following abstinence. Now when it comes to the Ajivika community, we are told that the country of Kosala was an important center for the Ajivikas, and particularly the city of Shravasti, which was considered an important stronghold of the Ajivika sect. Now let's talk about the Ajivika philosophy. So the philosophy of the Ajivikas revolved around Niyati or fate, and for the Ajivikas, the Niyati was the sole factor behind every change. to better understand this concept of niyati, we should first understand about the doctrine of karma. So according to the doctrine of karma, a man's action, whether performed in previous life or in this life, is responsible for his present condition. So in the doctrine of karma, a man or an individual is free to choose his action, and if he chooses the right action, good things will happen to him, and if he chooses wrong actions, bad thing will happen to him. So this is the basic doctrine of karma. But this doctrine of karma was rejected by the Ajivikas. They did not believe in the idea that a human is responsible for his action or the human has free will. For the Ajivikas, everything in the universe is governed by niyati. So if an individual is in a bad state, that is not because of his previous bad karma. So their doctrine was that everything which has happened, is happening, or will happen is already predetermined. So one's action cannot change anything. They also believed that one individual cannot attain salvation through his action. Every soul has a fixed time which he had to spend on this earth, and after this time he will attain salvation. Your action or your effort could not get you salvation. So that was the basic frame of the Ajivika doctrine. Now let's talk a little bit more about the concept of niyati in the Ajivika doctrine. So according to the Ajivikas, niyati had two categories. First was bhav and second was sangati. So the Ajivikas believed that an individual came into existence through niyati, and the niyati manifested itself in individual through bhav and sangati. So what does that mean? This means that when an individual came into existence, this happened not because of any actions, but because of niyati. And the niyati manifested itself in individual through bhav and sangati. So the bhav of an individual was his nature, and his nature was unalterable. And the sangati was the environment. So the environment of an individual, or the environment in which an individual found itself, is unalterable. So that means whatever you do and whatever you are going to do in future is already predetermined. So that was the basic concept of the Ajivika doctrine. Their doctrine can be summarized in their slogan, which was human effort is ineffectual. So the whole human effort and its implication was denied by the Ajivikas. Now one common question which most of us have when we listen to this philosophy is that if human effort is ineffectual, then why an Ajivika ascetic is practicing asceticism? He should enjoy his life. Now, for an Ajivika, he would say that he is practicing asceticism because it was his niyati to do so. You are enjoying your life is your niyati, and an Ajivika is practicing asceticism was his niyati. Now a similar type of question was asked by Mahavir to an Ajivika. So Mahavir asked an Ajivika who was a potter that suppose if one of your workers steals a pot, then what will you do? So the Ajivika replied that he would beat this worker who had stolen his pots. But Mahavir says that this worker is not stealing. According to your philosophy, this worker is stealing because it was niyati who had decided him to steal this pot. Now the response of the Ajivika is not present in the Jain text, but if this Ajivika was a smart person, he would have said that if this workman's niyati was to steal, then his niyati as a master was to beat him. So you can see that how a Ajivika would have responded to this type of questioning. So this was the basic philosophy of the Ajivikas. Now when we talk about the Ajivikas and how they declined, we see that in the Mauryan period, the Ajivikas were an important sect. And this can be seen from the fact that in the Mauryan inscription, particularly the inscription of Ashok, we find that the name of Ajivika is present. And we also see that Ashok had donated several caves to the Ajivika monks. Ashok's successor Dashrath also donated some caves to the Ajivika monks. But after the decline of the Mauryas, we see that there was a gradual decline in the importance of the Ajivika sect. And in the caves which were donated by the Mauryan kings, we see that the inscription which contains the name of Ajivikas, someone had tried to deface the name Ajivika itself. So this shows that after the Mauryan period, there were other sects who opposed this philosophy and they tried to remove the name of the Ajivikas from these inscriptions. We do not know who these sects were who tried to do so, but it is clear that after the Mauryan period, the Ajivikas began to decline, and after some time, particularly in the North India, we do not see any great reference to the Ajivika sect. But that doesn't mean that the Ajivika sect completely disappeared. We find that in the Cholamandalam area, the Ajivika sect survived up until the 14th century. So this was the basic introduction about the Ajivika doctrine and their history. Thank you for watching.